are talking The Black Mass, also known as simply Black Mass, and this is directed by Pinn, who you may know as a kind of screen queen, I guess. This is her directorial debut, and is effectively a movie about a well-known serial killer, but done in a kind of somewhat of an artistic style, I suppose. I'm not quite sure whether to kind of reveal the actual antagonist, I guess you would want to say, because the movie kind of plays like it's a bit of a surprise at the end. So I won't reveal it here, but it is a movie about a particular kind of serial killer in the 70s. Let me just say that. Anyway, effectively this is a day in the life of, and it follows our serial killer. And the title of Black Mass refers to how the description of one of the victims kind of saw him. So this is just this black mass in the darkness. It's not like a religious, term effectively in regards to this movie anyway. Yeah, so it effectively follows this this serial killer in a kind of 24-hour period as he is effectively stalking a number of female victims. And, we spend a lot of time with this guy lurking in the shadows. So although the movie is very much showing us from his point of view, we don't get much sort of in the way of character work from him. We get a lot of kind of like looking at various kind of victims having conversations, and so they're the ones that kind of are spotlighted in regards to the kind of the characters, I suppose. But he's like this ever-present presence, just lurking in the darkness all the time. So it gives it a somewhat of a unique flavour. Now, what will happen? You have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss Black Mass. So one of the key things here is I think this stylistic choice, which makes it for somewhat of an uncomfortable view in some ways, because it kind of feels the movie is putting you in the shoes of this particular serial killer and allowing us as the viewer to kind of, see him stalking these victims. Quite often the movie actually kind of puts you in a POV kind of shot, so we're almost showing it from his eyes. And then in other shots, the interesting thing here is when we do see our serial killer on screen, we never get like a lingering kind of like look at him. It's always sort of like he's slightly turned away, or it's kind of over the shoulder, or you'll see just like his hands. They really rarely ever kind of shows you our kind of serial killer face on. We do see a bit here and there, but it's fleeting. So it gives you this sense of disconnect. But what the movie does instead is I say, from the point of view of this serial killer, is look at our victims and we see them in their lives, unaware of the danger that they're in. So I think it gives it a kind of quite a neat kind of like feel to this movie. The movie also, I think, wonderfully captures this kind of 70s aesthetic. Now, it is a lower budget movie, so we don't have things like a lot of the kind of like the big songs, for example, that were in the 70s. But even without that, I think it does a good job here of selling you on the 70s with like the hair and the makeup and the kind of the clothing and everything. I think it does a good job, considering obviously it's not a huge budget movie. So fair play to that. The movie also, because you could almost argue it that in occasion it's not a found footage movie, but it almost feels like a sort of that style of movie, because we feel like we're spying on our victims, because we're watching our victims have conversations from the point of view of our serial killer, and he's just watching, and they're just kind of like going about their lives. So it gives you this voyeuristic kind of view, a little bit like found footage in a way. But it does really feel, it gives it somewhat of an uncomfortable feel, because you do feel like you're just peering into other people's lives. So I think for, her directorial debut, it's actually quite a strong entry in regards to directorial style. It is not just to pick up a camera and, let the action happen in a kind of mundane way. It's very much crafted in quite a unique way, but gives it this kind of very unsettling kind of feel to it. It's not completely perfect in regard to that sort of stuff, and I'll come on to that in just a minute, but nonetheless, you know, I think it is effective. When we do have our kind of scenes of violence, which happens relatively late on in the film, it's you know, filmed in a way where it's very brutal, quite disturbing in kind of nature, and you know, it feels, you almost feel like the victims didn't have a chance. You know, they were kind of so kind of like attacked while they were sleeping and things like that. It's not like a slasher where our killer is running after the kind of the victims and things like that. This guy was stalking and got them at kind of in their most vulnerable, you know, positions ultimately. The acting is all pretty good. You know, I wasn't sort of taking out of the movie by any kind of like, you know, weaker performances. I thought the acting was all sort of solid. There's not a central protagonist as such, so you just kind of get little vignettes of different kind of people through the movie's kind of runtime. Our main character, the serial killer, doesn't say a huge amount. We do get a little bit of dialogue from him, but you know, so it's very much kind of like little fits and starts in regards to the actual kind of acting kind of side of stuff. What doesn't work, I will say, I think the movie takes a little bit of time to kind of get going. You know, you feel like it takes a good 20 to 30 minutes to find its feet, I would say. And if you're not really sure what you're watching, and as I say, this movie is trying to be vague in regards to what it's actually kind of showing you. I think it's relatively obvious, but I still won't say it here. But if on the off chance that you don't really know what you're watching, I don't know if it's kind of, it will keep you fully engaged, certainly within that kind of, that first half an hour. The downside to me of this style of filmmaking and what Pinn's done here, I think maybe the editing could have been possibly a little bit different. And what I mean by that, there is a lot of sequences here where we have a very like long take, or there's like a sequence which you just feel just goes on a little bit too long, and we feel the camera is lingering, or the scene could have been edited, and it almost feels like it was. I mean, I think what the attempt here was to do was to kind of make you feel uneasy and you know, have this kind of like uncomfortable feel because the camera is lingering for so long, and quite often it's on more of a mundane scene, but it kind of, you almost feel like it's one of those Family Guy sequences where they deliberately kind of, you know, drag out the kind of like the sequence and stuff like that. So I do think they maybe could have dialed back on that, done it on maybe one or two scenes, but I think maybe a little bit it overdoes it just a tad, and you're thinking, come on, let's kind of move on now. As I say, I think the movie does take a little bit of time to get going, and I think it tries to have this, you know, here's who this guy is at the end of the movie, but it's so obvious. I mean, if you have the faintest idea about serial killers, it's pretty obvious, you know, who this is and what's actually going on. So I don't know if it really needed to do it as a surprise, to be honest, because I know maybe you could have had a little bit more sort of an up close and personal look had it chosen not to try and save this reveal towards the end and have it as a gotcha moment, when I really don't think it is a gotcha moment, and it could have had a little bit more context, I think, through the movie had they made it clear to the viewer who it is you're actually kind of watching. So, you know, I think this is a strong directorial debut, and certainly an above average kind of low budget serial killer movie, and you know, with a sort of a strong artistic voice. I think maybe it could have been looked at a little bit to make it maybe a little bit more engaging, if I'm honest. But it's still an above average film. I'll give this one a solid 7 out of 10 actually. I think it's pretty strong. But you know, like I say, maybe there was some choices that I would have done differently, but I'm not a filmmaker. So there you go. 7 out of 10. What did you think of it? Please do let me know what your thoughts are, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.